mentioned unchecked
Yeah,
inflation?
there's nobody suggesting there's unchecked inflation on the way. No serious economist. There's nobody suggesting there's unchecked inflation on the way. No serious economist. There's nobody suggesting there's unchecked inflation on the way. No serious economist. There's nobody suggesting there's unchecked inflation on the way. No serious economist. There's nobody suggesting there's unchecked inflation on the way. No serious economist. There's nobody suggesting there's unchecked inflation on the way. No serious economist. There's nobody suggesting there's unchecked inflation on the way. No serious economist. There's nobody suggesting there's unchecked inflation on the way. No serious economist. There's nobody suggesting there's unchecked inflation on the way. No serious economist.
Hey everybody, Smart Silver Stacker here. Hope you enjoyed that little intro, and of course we did just get the inflation numbers for May, and they're not looking good. You know, I think that we had been hoping that inflation had peaked, or at least the mainstream, that was sort of the narrative, that in April inflation numbers had peaked because we had seen them drop slightly, we had seen the rate of inflation decline, but now it is back up on the rise, back up to 8.6% year-over-year inflation in May. And of course, that's measured by the CPI, which I believe understates inflation considerably. I've talked about that at length in other videos, so if you want to know what I'm talking about, go check those out. Real inflation, much higher than that, unfortunately, and no signs of stopping, really. And that's not too much of a surprise because there really hasn't been anything done to curb inflation. You know, so far, what we've seen is the president has released some oil from the strategic petroleum reserves. Obviously, this is like putting a band-aid on a gunshot wound. You know, it's not a real solution. It is just a very quick fix kind of thing. And already, I believe we are seeing the effects of that wearing off as crude oil is now trading around $120 a barrel, resuming its climb higher. And stocks have really not reacted well to these inflation numbers today. All of the major stock indexes dropping. I think the Nasdaq's down over 3%. Other major indexes down in a big way. And gold and silver did take a little bit of a hit at the beginning of the session today, but at the time I'm recording this video, they're both back up in the green. One of the few sectors in the markets that is in the green today. And that kind of makes sense. You know, they're not getting huge gains, but they're not getting decimated like the rest of the market. And of course, in the face of rising inflation, it would make sense that gold and silver would be moving higher as they are the traditional hedges against the forces of inflation. But one of the ways I think that we know that inflation has not really peaked and that inflation is going to continue moving much higher is because precious metals remain so inexpensive and so affordable today. And I think that by the time inflation really peaks and really has made its big moves, gold and silver are going to be trading much higher than they are today, and I think the time is coming. You know, I can't pinpoint it. I don't have a crystal ball, of course. I personally would expect already that gold and silver would be higher today than they are, but you know, they say markets can remain irrational longer than you can remain liquid. Well, you know, all I can really say about that is don't get shaken out. You know, don't be a weak hand, because the time is coming for gold and silver. And, you know, of course, none of this is financial advice. I'm not telling you guys what to do. You always got to do your own due diligence, and there's no one-size-fits-all solution for protecting yourself from inflation. But I do view gold and silver both as being tremendous deals today, and they are showing their nature as inflation hedges, as they're one of the few assets that's not getting hit on this inflation news. Stocks are getting hit, and you might think that stocks would rise on inflationary news because, of course, you know, the dollar is losing its value. You're pricing the stocks in dollars, so you'd expect the prices to go higher. But I believe a lot of these companies are coming under inflationary pressures, kind of like Target and Walmart. Inflation is really starting to dig into their margins. It's starting to impact consumers and where they can spend their money. And so a lot of these companies that rely on discretionary spending from consumers, they are going to continue to see an effect in their earnings and in their sales. And companies like energy companies, food companies, you know, businesses that provide things that consumers have to buy, basically, no matter how high the prices go, I think those businesses are going to continue to weather the storm much better than these businesses that rely on discretionary spending. But really, I do feel like gold and silver are going to be the big winners moving forward. I just did a video on these gold backs. I released that earlier today. If you haven't seen that, you should go check that out, because pretty soon that might be the currency coming to a store near you. And I know that that might sound a little extreme, but if inflation continues to move up at the rate that it is, I think investors and just consumers in general are going to begin looking to alternatives like gold and silver as a way to protect their purchasing power. Gas is already almost $5 a gallon. Diesel is approaching $6, and that is going to have a huge impact on everything in the economy for the foreseeable future. And there is just this perfect storm. We've got an oil embargo against Russia, got this conflict between nations in the EU and Russia demanding payments for gas in rubles, and some of these European players not playing along. So this is all driving the price of energy much higher. But, if you look at a chart of crude oil and you see how it was moving up before the war in Ukraine kicked off, it's pretty clear that Putin is not the only factor weighing on the energy market. It's all the money creation. It's all the easy money. And I mentioned that not a lot has been done to combat inflation so far. That nonsense with the strategic petroleum reserves, not only is that a bad idea because, this isn't the kind of emergency that those reserves are designed for, but also the Fed has done very little so far. They've talked a good game, I guess, but look at what they've done so far. They've raised the federal funds rate by 0.75%. So before they did that, you were losing, 8 point something percent on your cash holdings annually, according to the CPI, of course. So really the purchasing power of your cash declining much faster than that, but let's just use the official numbers. And so now they're declining at 7.5% annually, the purchasing power of your paper. Clearly that's not a big enough move to make any kind of real meaningful impact on inflation. When you've got inflation this high, you need to have interest rates at least close to the rate of inflation, 6, 7, 8, 9% interest rates in order to get something like this under control. But of course, we're not going to see that, because if you think that the market reaction to inflation numbers has been bad, imagine what the markets would do if interest rates were raised that way in short order. It would be pandemonium. It would be an absolute collapse. And I really just don't think that the Fed or anybody in our leadership has the wherewithal to make a move like that. I think it's pretty much out of the question. We're going to continue to see these token interest rate increases, in a token attempt to fight inflation. But it is understood that the economic recovery that has been touted is all based on the wealth effect, and any move in interest rates that would threaten that is going to be out of the question. At least that's how I see it. It's always a good idea to keep some powder dry, I suppose, just in case somebody does decide to make some critical move that's going to crash markets, and you can scoop up assets on the cheap. But for me, the majority of my liquidity is held in the form of metals, in the form of real money. If you want some currency that's not going to be debased to the tune of 8.6% on an annual basis, something like a gold back is going to protect your purchasing power a lot better than a Federal Reserve note. And of course, my all-time favorite asset is silver. Now, premiums on silver still remaining elevated. I know that silver, the spot price is still real cheap, around $22, but of course, if you do want to get your hands on a 1 ounce round like this, you're going to be paying $25, $26, but that's still a steal, I think. And I know, I sound like a broken record. I've been saying this for a while now, but we really are lucky that inflation, as high as it is, has not crept into the precious metal space yet, because I view that move as inevitable. And the longer the price of precious metals remains suppressed, the more opportunity there is for us stackers. So, what's inflation going to do from here? Well, I expect it'll probably move much higher. Crude oil taking a slight hit today, but it's still around $120. So this is just a breather for it, I think. We're going to see much higher energy prices as the summer moves along, and as we move into colder weather in the fall and the winter. I think that's when we're really going to see an acceleration in inflation, in energy prices, in global shortages of fuels. And we got to get prepared for that. We need to be getting ready. We need to be getting food. We need to be making some plans for higher energy prices, whether that means getting a more fuel efficient vehicle, riding your bike more, carpooling, whatever, figure out some way to withstand these inflationary pressures, because I'm here to tell you, I know I'm not a serious economist, but inflation is going to get much worse, and you heard it here. So just want to say thank you, all of you, very much for watching today and for continuing to support the channel. Like I said, if you haven't seen that video about Goldbacks yet, go check that out. And stay safe, everybody. Happy stacking. I will catch you next time. Smart Silver Stacker, out.